Um, I'd like to try and explain this, because why would anybody want to build a world-class gold mining project? And the truth is that my family were quite involved in this one way and another. And when my cousin Jocelyn asked the Queen for lunch, he found it rather difficult to show her something interesting when she came to lunch, and decided that the best thing to do would be to make a pile in the vault of £1 million. And that's what it looked like in 1963. Pretty impressive. And that's what it looks like today. So that's why I decided I really, really wanted to be in the gold business. Please go. I chose Russia actually because it chose me. My father had been in the business in Samuel Montague, and he taught me the Russians were good people to do gold business with. They always paid on time, he said. I eventually ended up working for McAdder and Goldsmith, which was then the largest gold trading company in the world, and we got to be Russia's largest gold trading counterparty. Not only in physical gold, which was very important to them. They used gold when they needed money. They either sold it or they borrowed against it, and because it's nobody else's promise, it was an easy thing for them to borrow against. And when the wall came down and everything changed, the people who were in the bank decided that they wanted to leave banking and central banking and wanted to become an entrepreneur, and the only entrepreneur in the West they knew was me. And so we set off around the world to try and find strange things. And they introduced me to Pavel Maslovsky, who became my business partner then, and is indeed still my business partner. And we founded a tiny little company called Zoloto Mining, Zoloto being the Russian for gold. I thought that Russia was a good place to go because it had lots and lots of gold. Very important. There's lots of gold in England, but it's underneath the Bank of England. But in Russia it was easier to find. Pavel had a rather ramshackle mining operation at Tokor, which really didn't turn out to be worth anything, but he had the license for the Pokrovka deposit, which the Soviet era experts had said had 9 grams a ton on the surface. Now, those of us who are interested in mining knows that 9 grams on the surface is virtually impossible to make a mess of. But being very, very careful, I put parallel holes into a couple or 3 places to see whether it was real. And every single time, we got better grades. And eventually I said to Pavel, why is that? And he said, well, you see, in the Soviet era, if you were a geologist and you predicted something had 9 grams and it only came up with 7 grams, you were sent somewhere even nastier. But if it came up better, nobody cared. So always those grades in those far off days were under recorded. So that was a fine place to start as far as I was concerned. The other thing was that the people that he had working for him were excellent. We had the head of the Amur Region Geological Survey. We had the man who had built Muruntau. We had an underground miner from Tokor, who actually knew what they were doing. Pavel and I actually knew nothing, because he was a metallurgist from the Ministry, the University of Aircraft Technology, and I was a banker. And so this was a very amateur operation, but extraordinarily, we did build it into something that was once worth just about £1 million. Of course, the country risk was said by everybody to be scary. And actually, it turned out that it wasn't. We lived through several presidents, lots of governors, and we never had any real problem with the government itself. We had one challenge from we like to call them a competitor, who tried to steal the license from us in the very early days, but we beat them in court. And then we had another crazy situation where the man who had been fighting for Gazprom against Shell in the Sakhalin oil business, Alec Midval, and won because he said the contract was unfair, and when Shell said it wasn't, and they were entirely happy with what he was going on. He said, but in your contract it says no dead fish, and produced a dead fish, and that absolutely wrecked that. Anyway, he was given as a prize the opportunity to run in Rosprirrodnadzor, which is the natural resources side of the Ministry of the Environment. And the game was that his friends would sell short shares, and then he would say that he was going to investigate the company, and that made the share price go down, and so they made a fortune. And he did indeed do this to us, and he found one infraction of the code, and we got a $700 fine, and that cost us $500 million in market capitalization. So that was the only, but that wasn't a government thing, that was just straight out and out, which we call business. And I found that life in other jurisdictions was even stranger. In one country where I was operating, I had to, they tried to make me take over the past pollution caused by a state-owned enterprise, which I had bought. In another place, the general manager's house was bombed. Luckily, he was so drunk he never heard it. And I had one general manager actually murdered, which was not good news at all. And then in a third one, I was convicted of manslaughter because somebody had a heart attack in the shower, and the union thought they could get extra money for his widow if it was a work-related accident. But luckily, that was considered to be not real, and I got acquitted of all that. So Mother Russia itself was really a much easier place to work, because we understood the system, thanks very much to my Russian partner, who has been the guy with whom I've worked for 25 years. So there are positives and negatives. Before from 1991 onwards, until the Bush family decided to build a radar screen between Russia and the West, everybody in Russia loved the West, and we had a very popular, and we were loved, and everybody dreamed of going to America and Hollywood and the south of France and boats and things. And then suddenly the whole thing became negative, and this crazy political level problems started, and it's got worse and worse and worse since then. And the awful thing is that I see very little chance of that changing, but at a commercial level, things are going fine. And if you go to the Foreign Office, what you hear is business as usual, and we've done that very recently just to check that this is actually the case. So, but in terms of the mining investors, we have two types. I call the bigger fool somebody who buys a gold mining share on the basis that he's going to sell it to somebody else, thinking he is cleverer than the next person, but actually he possibly isn't, and therefore I call him the bigger fool. And then the others who are much more sensible, and they get involved in actually what the cash flow of the companies they've invested in, because these days, with due respect to the London Stock Exchange, the liquidity on the stock exchanges is so low on all of them around the world. The chances of getting in or getting out is so difficult. There isn't the sponge that there used to be when I started in the city. And so if you're going to buy a mining share, you've got to know that you've got a reasonable chance of access to the cash flow of that company through dividends. And of course, it's the problem here is that the negatives have now caused us really quite big problems. Despite that, Petropavlovsk, which is now returned to as president, is actually doing really well, because it has espoused the most important thing in the gold mining market in the world, and that is the treatment of refractory ore. The world is running out of easy-to-treat ore, and the ore that is locked up in a quartz sulfur matrix is just as good, but you have to do in 45 minutes what Mother Nature takes 4.5 million years to do, which means very small grinding and treatment at very high temperatures and very high pressures in pure oxygen, which liberates it. This is something which we are championing. We have a a new business there which we've spent 10 years working on. The concentration part of it is working full out. The commissioning is going ahead at the moment now, and I think we hope that we will produce the first gold from that project by Christmas. I think that is a really important change in our lives, and it's something that every mining company should be looking at in a big way now. No? Yes. But I think the market has actually overlooked that as far as Petrocal is concerned, because it unlocks 4 million ounces that otherwise would be unrecoverable. So that's why I accepted to be chosen by Russia, and I think our decision to build a world-class mining company wasn't misplaced. Whether we did it in quite the right way is open to question, but it's still there and it's working, and it's working well. Of course, I'm involved in mining in Russia in other ways because I'm a director of IRC, the iron ore operation which we have on the Chinese border. We're exporting iron ore from Russia to China, and there's a new bridge across the Hambro River being commissioned next year at some stage. That's taken a long time. So I have a wider scope of interest than just gold, and that's been quite fun. And as chairman of the mining committee of the British Kazakh Society, we're doing what we can to help mining companies to raise money and to do business in London. Thank you very much.